You're all very welcome to the third, I'm not sure what Kevin said there, but I'm sure it's on live TV. You're all very welcome to the third session of the Labour Party 70th National Conference. I hope everybody is in, but if there's still a few people out in the bar, you might just bring them in if that's okay. We're going to start now, without any further ado. What I'm going to do is introduce our MC and our host for this evening, Jan O'Sullivan, TD.
Thank you, Brian. You're all very welcome to our evening session, which of course culminates in the leader's speech. But the first item on our agenda tonight is the inaugural Labour Academy Awards, and we have a number of recipients lined up here to receive their awards, and they're going to be presented by Tish and Mags. So I now want to introduce Tish and Mags, who are going to present the awards.
Thank you, Jan. Delegates, comrades and guests, the last time I spoke from this conference stage was in Galway in 2012, when I was thrown into the role of Acting General Secretary for the weekend, mind, as Ita McAuliffe couldn't make it at short notice. On the Friday evening I addressed conference and referenced the presidential campaign win that we had a few months earlier, having worked on the 2011 campaign committee. And I just tonight want to thank my hard-working head office colleagues for their support and for covering my work when I disappeared for 6 weeks to work as campaign manager on the campaign to re-elect Michael D. Higgins. And thanks so much to many of you who are here this evening who helped us do this, not once, but twice. The Labour Academy has been a pet project of mine for the last few years. Unlike other training events we have run, where the focus has been on electoral cycles, this one trains activists on the history of the party, teaches them about the Labour Party, or the Labour movement, which is part of our foundation, and also the ideology behind our party policies. It makes them ambassadors for our party. So when I met a kindred spirit in SIPTU College earlier this year, I knew it would finally happen. Dr. Tish Gibbons, head of SIPTU College.
Guramachagat Mags. Gwine Ushla, Guramachagiv Lashon Guru Vechan Shaw, Anocht Lashon Okaj Specialta Shaw. And I'm particularly grateful to your General Secretary, Brian McDowell, and your Head of Campaigns, Mags Murphy, for giving SIPTU College the opportunity to develop and deliver the Labour Academy programme. I understand that they did so on the suggestion of your party chairperson and SIPTU's former president, Jack O'Connor. Jack was also one of the instigators of a similar programme we ran in SIPTU for a number of years called Educate to Organise. And the title of that programme explains it all, because we came to realise that we needed to educate ourselves before we could organise others. And that if we were ever to change society for the good of working people, that we must first understand how and why that society is the way that it is. That we needed to define its problems and know the causes. That we needed to start with an understanding of our history, to gain a grasp of the ideology that informs our policies, and finally to find the wherewithal or the skills to organise for positive change in that society. And these are as necessary in a social movement as they proved to be in an individual trade union, and I think in the broad labour movement in particular. And if we're to start with an understanding of our history, then we should note how the extent to which that history is shared amongst all of us across the Irish labour movement. Remember that the Irish Trades Union Congress and the Labour Party were one and the same entity for many years. Take a look sometime, when you have a minute from campaigning, to look at the proceedings of their 24th annual conference, held in 1916 in the shadow of the execution of our shared co-founder, James Connolly. The minutes of that conference record resolutions which called for the establishment of the right to work for a living wage, for the building of healthy houses in our towns and cities, for better pensions and an end to gender inequality, at least with regard to the latter. Now, I don't mean to depress you when you're all in good form this evening, but there is an eerie similarity with some of those resolutions to some of the resolutions on the agenda for this weekend, and indeed on the agenda of the various SIPTU divisional conferences also taking place at this time of the year. So we've been campaigning on those same issues, sometimes jointly, sometimes separately, sometimes at loggerheads, for well over 100 years. So if those problems in society are persisting and they remain very much the same, then we who would tackle them must prepare ourselves to do that in a particular way. As Tom Johnson said at that very meeting, and I quote, "We have to cast aside all those ideas and impressions which we have received from current literature, history, or philosophy, based as they are on a capitalist conception of society." His words, not mine. And so we need to form our own ideas and impressions based on our own conception of society. And that's what we sought to do in SIP2 College, in Educate to Organise, and now in the Labour Academy. So in our first session, we traced our joint history with Dr. Jack McGinley. We examined vision and the idea of visions with Rory Quinn. We explored and compared left, centrist, right-wing ideologies and maybe challenged ourselves a little bit in the discussions. In our second session, Labour Party policy was outlined by Labour Party senators. Equality by Professor Ivana Bacik, education by Aidan O'Riordan, and of course, because it's SIP2 College, workers' rights by Jed Nash, of course. Our final session explored social activism with Susie Byrne, and we had a really practical hands-on session with a SIP2 College tutor, Dan O'Neill. It was a pleasure to work with each and every one of you in the delivery of that programme, and of course a pleasure to work with the participants, and I want to acknowledge them now, this fine group of activists here beside me who brought such enthusiasm and intelligence to all of our sessions. And I have a rule that there should be no tales out of school, but I'm going to break it. They're all denying it, so I can't actually name and shame. But our session on party policy concluded with a series of debates on the policies and ideologies that we have been discussing earlier in the day. And the participants were divided into opposing groups, okay, and they were told, they were given their statements and they were to argue the toss. I don't know if it's the first time that SIP2 College ever witnessed a course participant jumping up on a chair or a desk, delivering an impassioned speech and challenging their opponents. But if it is, I'm very pleased that it happened on my watch and that it happened with this particular group. I've no doubt that they brought that same enthusiasm and spirit to the recent slaying of dragons that everybody is still celebrating. And I look forward to a further and wider such collaboration across the labour movement, and in particular to host such enthusiasm and spirit at SIP2 College in any future Labour Academy. Gora Machagiv. You can keep going and we'll get the floor. Okay.
Now, delegates, we have some very important people coming on stage. I think one of the best events we have at Labour Party conferences, and we've had them every Labour Party conference for many years now, is the Long Service Awards. And these are awards that are given to people who have given service to the party right around the country in the various levels of activity that they participate in on behalf of the Labour Party. And many of them have served for many, many, many years. So we're going to invite them up on stage, and I'm going to begin by speaking about John Maher. No, I'm not, I'm told. Oh, Joe's first, okay. Joe Rourke joined the Labour Party as a young man. Possibly a teenager in the mid-1960s. He's been a loyal and active member, working hard for the party through each leadership from Brendan Corish to Brendan Howland today. During his time as a party member, Joe has worn out countless pairs of shoes, canvassing for every Meath candidate and TD since Jimmy Tully. He was also heavily involved in European election campaigns and in the presidential campaigns, Mary Robinson and indeed for Michael D as well, both times. He also, of course, canvassed for and was Director of Elections for his comrade and great friend Tommy Grimes. Joe himself ran as a local election candidate in 1985 and served as chair of the Kells branch of the Labour Party for a number of years. And in fact, he held almost every officership in the branch at one time or another. So congratulations, Joe. John Maher has been a member of the Mallow branch number 1 for over 50 years. During this time, he's been a loyal and faithful servant of the party, campaigning and postering in local and general elections and standing up for the party and the trade union movement. His devotion to postering is legendary. Up at the crack of dawn to get the best possible spots for the posters and every day for the duration of the campaign. John is a proud trade unionist who's always stood up for his fellow workers and a proud member of the Labour Party, and he's a very worthy recipient of the Long Service Award. Well done, John. Congratulations. You got a photo? We have Geraldine Cusack, who is represented here by Claire Toohey. Geraldine will reach her 100th birthday next March, so Claire is here on her behalf. And she's been a lifelong supporter of the Labour Party. Originally from Westport, she was educated in the UK from the age of 12 and remembers long queues at the dole office, even in the small market towns. The memory stayed with her, and spurred by a sense of fairness, she automatically veered to joining left-wing Labour in 1945. When Geraldine moved back to Ireland in 1964, she joined the Labour Party here. She's been an active supporter of Labour at local and constituency level throughout the intervening years, though latterly she's been unable to canvass or attend meetings. She's honoured by this award and regrets her inability to attend tonight. And she and her family thank the Labour Party most sincerely. So I'm going to present to her. Now we move to Mary Lawless, member of the Labour Party Dublin Bay South. Mary's been one of the key people in the Labour Party in Dublin Bay South for over 3 decades. In the earlier years, along with her husband Brendan, she was a key organiser in the run-in to general and local elections, when Brendan would organise the posters to be put up for Rory Quinn, and Rory's here tonight, and Mary would ensure a full canvass of Ringsend and surrounding districts. Mary has continued her hard work in supporting Kevin Humphreys, Mary Freehill and Dermot Lacey in general and local elections. Mary's been very much the public face of the Labour Party in the many community groups that she's involved in, from residents' associations, parents' groups, and her involvement in Regal House, which gives young people in the inner city a second chance in education, resulting in hundreds of young people over the last 20 years getting the training and skills to start a successful career. Labour would not have achieved the successes in Dublin Bay South without the hard work and dedication Mary has shown to the Labour Party over more than 4 decades. Well done, Mary. Congratulations. Well done. Have a look at Carl. And last but not least, somebody I know very well from a neighbouring constituency, Joe Walsh. Joe joined the Labour Party in Dublin Central in 1977. She ran for the local elections in 1979 and was very active in the party during tumultuous times for Labour. We're used to those. Jo has worked on equality issues for women throughout her activism in the trade union movement, equal pay, maternity leave, better opportunities for women at all levels. In Clare, she was to the fore in the successful Mary Robinson presidential campaign in Clare with the Labour Party, and she also worked with the late Jim Kemmy TD and indeed with myself in 1991 to help revive the Labour Party in Clare. Jo persuaded Musaji Bamji to stand as a candidate to contest the general election in 1991, and we all remember him very well. She was his Director of Elections in the successful campaign which returned Musaji as a TD for Clare. Jo has held many posts. And he's still active. Jo has held many posts at Labour Party branch and constituency level over the years in Clare and is current Secretary of the Constituency Council. Having been involved in all election and referenda campaigns with Labour for many years, she was delighted when Michael McNamara was elected as a TD to represent Clare in the Dáil in 2011, and Michael is here with us today as well. Jo has given tremendous service to the Labour Party in helping it to electoral success in difficult constituencies and in flying the flag with the many diligent volunteers in Clare. And I'm sure you will agree that in her life to date, Jo has truly lived up to the motto, "An injury to one is the concern of all." Congratulations, Jo. Now we're going to move on, and I'm sure all of you remember, we talked about the Michael D election earlier on, but there was a very, very successful election campaign on the 25th of May this year, when we finally repealed the 8th Amendment. And we're now going to show a very short video in relation to that campaign.
The state acknowledges the right to life of the unborn and with due regard to the equal right to life of the mother, guarantees in its law to respect and so far as practicable by its laws to defend and to vindicate that right.
This was the first time that a particular dominantly Catholic group of people got together, and they brought a very large number, the majority, vast majority of politicians on board on the issue of abortion, which up to then had not been a singular issue in society. But between 81 and 83, it became a dominant issue.
All the Labour senators, led by Mary Robinson, including Michael D. Higgins, we all collectively put out an amendment to stop this bill having a second reading.
1983 was my first political campaign, and it was really difficult. We were really treated as if we were killing babies, and at the same time, those of us who campaigned felt very strongly that putting an article into the Constitution that equated the right to life of a mother with the right to life of the unborn just wasn't practical, and also was very uncaring.
Abortion already happens every day in Ireland. Voting yes will allow us to have a healthcare system that regulates abortion and that looks after women's health at home.
It's a much bigger question than simply yes or no to repeal. It's about the kind of Ireland we want to live in, whether it's a modern, outward-looking, open and inclusive Ireland that really believes in equality for our citizens, or whether it's a backward-looking, conservative vision of Ireland, very far removed from the republic that we should be dreaming of and aspiring towards.
We have the opportunity to treat women in difficult situations with compassion and to do so at home in their own country.
As a state, we can no longer keep up the pretence. We're asking the people of Ireland to go out and vote and not stand in the way of women who need to access those services.
Labour is on the side of women.
Equality,
Compassion.
now
Then,
and always.
So we're now going to present the James Larkin Thirst for Justice Award, And the three very deserving recipients whom we are honoured to have with us today are the three spokespersons for the national campaign group Together for Yes: Grania Griffin, Orla O'Connor and Alva Smith.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you, Jan. And thank you to all of you here tonight, and indeed to the party. It's far too dangerous a night to start naming names or saying thank yous. But I really am aware, and we all are, of just how much work each and every one of you put in over the weeks and months and indeed the decades to ensure that what happened on the 25th did in fact take place. It was a great privilege to be able to hold the role that we did, and a great vantage point in which to witness our society change and carve out its new history. Together for Yes really was a people's campaign. It brought together campaigners and new activists and families and voices from all over the country to speak about their experiences and their beliefs and their hopes for a better Ireland. I remember on the 26th when the tallies, and of course our active tally people were sending the numbers in, and we got the word in from the West that we'd won the islands. And I remember it really brought home in some ways really poignant, because you think about the barriers and the challenges that those women must have faced over the years to access services, but also just how far the campaign and everything that it stood for had reached and the impact that it had made, and it really was incredibly powerful. It was a campaign for all women and for all access to abortion, and I think that request and that demand in and of itself was incredibly unexpected when the time finally came for a referendum. For many people, they've always believed that the moment would come when we would be asked, would the Eighth Amendment remain within the Constitution? But the alternative, for the alternative to be for a woman to walk into a doctor's clinic and without explanation or without having to justify her reason to be able to access healthcare, I don't think there's many of us that truly believe that that moment would come. When I first became active in abortion rights, and I have to say, I'm not from a generation that remembers Miss X, and the first time I stood in front of the courts, it was in the name of Miss D. And I am very grateful in particular to the women of the Labour Party who led the way and showed me some of what was going on at the time. To Ivana, to Jane Horgan-Jones, to Sinead Ahern, to Rhonda Donaghy, to the women who spoke up and kept the flame lit when there wasn't much of a fire to keep burning. It was in that environment that we set up the abortion rights campaign in 2012 with a view to step out of the shadows, with a view to speak in a language that would reduce stigma and that would recognise what women needed. Our president said recently that language is very important, and he was right. And it was something that proved only too powerful throughout a referendum campaign that spoke proudly of the need for care, compassion, and change. I think that belief and that move in both language and in hope owes a lot to the young people and to the young women in particular who were at the forefront of the campaign and on the streets all over the country. It was their passion and their energy, born out of a hope and an optimism, but also a ferocious belief that they were owed more and that they would claim what was due to them. They would not follow the same path of the women that had gone before them, and instead they would lay a new path of self-belief, bodily autonomy, and constitutional rights. We were incredibly proud and honoured to take the steps on that path on the 25th of May, and deeply grateful to all of you who took it with us. I know and I'm confident that you'll all be with us now on the remainder of that path as we seek to deliver the actual accessible healthcare that is required to make that vision a reality. Thank you.
I want to sincerely thank the Labour Party tonight and to thank you for this generous award and the recognition for the Together for Yes campaign. This was a campaign that brought women, that brought people, that brought families, and that brought political parties together to achieve one of the most critical rights for women, that of reproductive rights. The repeal of the 8th Amendment was absolutely a historic change for women in our society. And it's been a very long campaign, as you all in this room know. It's been a long campaign and one in which your party has been central throughout the decades. It's taken 35 years to remove the 8th and finally to recognise women's reproductive rights. And also from the scale of the result represents such an enormous shift for women's rights and equality in our society. And this is particularly a special occasion for me as Director of the Women's Council, because I have the opportunity in particular to thank Labour women who, as members of the National Women's Council of Ireland, as members of the National Women's Council of Ireland, Labour women were central in the development of the NWCI position and policy on abortion over the years. So a huge special thanks tonight, in particular to Ivana Bacik, who led that and drove those motions. Because it was that leadership that formed and that helped shape our strong mandate, which enabled me and enabled the National Women's Council to be leaders in both securing the referendum and in the Together for Yes campaign. And the solidarity that was shown between groups and political parties across the country was immense. And I also really want to thank tonight Jan O'Sullivan for her work in the Oireachtas Committee. Because her work is pivotal now in the formation of the legislation which we're now debating. The campaign and the result brought many unique and first-time features. And first and foremost, it was a women-centred campaign. But it became very clear that the campaign was not only about abortion, it was about how women were and are treated in our society, and it was not a quiet revolution. Together for Yes mobilised thousands of volunteers across the country to the extent that was never seen before. But at the heart of our campaign were the experiences and voices of women and couples. And they were extraordinarily brave, coming forward and sharing their deep personal stories in order to achieve change. And they did so that no other couple or woman would have to live through what they had to endure. And this also represents one of the key learnings of this campaign for bringing about change into the future. And that is placing the experiences of women at the centre of our campaigning, our lobbying, and our decision-making about women's rights. And I believe it is only in this way that we will build solidarity and public support that's necessary to bring about the change that women so need. It is also why now we must ensure that the legislation and the services to provide abortion are also women-centred, and that we move forward to free contraception and comprehensive sex education in our schools. There is, without a shadow of a doubt, an energised women's movement in Ireland, and I believe the support from people in this campaign shows that real, meaningful change for women is not alone possible, but very achievable, and I know that we want to work with you in order to bring that together and bring that forward. So a sincere thank you to you tonight.
I just have to say, it has been a most extraordinary year, it really has, and I personally still feel tremendously emotional about it. People say, are you recovered yet? And I don't think I am. I still feel that sense of, quite honestly, huge relief that at long last, women in this country have freedom over our own bodies. And that just means so much to each and every single one of us, and I think it means a great deal for the country. It was as if there was this kind of seismic shift that happened when Irish people came together to say, oh, for heaven's sake, yes, of course, we have to do that now. And once it was done, everybody seems to have taken it on board. But my God, did we ever work for it? All of you, all of us, all of us. We worked, we fought, we strategized, we organized, we planned, we prepared. And the point is that we did it together. We did it together from the very start. I remember the early days of the coalition to repeal the 8th Amendment, when Sinead Ahern stepped forward and said, Labour women is in. And then there was Labour youth. And then there was Labour equality, and after that, eventually, there was the Labour Party. But you did come in. And I want to say thank you. Thank you to the leaders. Thank you to everybody. I too want to say a big thank you to Jan O'Sullivan for that steady, firm hand in the Joint Committee, and a very special thank you to my friend and very long-time co-campaigner, Ivana Bacik, who stood up, who is such a stalwart member of your party and who has never flinched from standing up for the rights of women and the rights of all of those who are vulnerable and in need of equality and justice. I want to also to say that the work is not over. We won, yes we did, and what we won was a mandate to ensure that women will be able to access abortion, free, legal and safe in this country from now on. Yes, Brian, I'm winding up now. And that's what we all want. There's so much on our agendas. I can only say I am proud that we did it together, cross-party, cross-sector, across Ireland. It was a tremendous victory for us all. Thank you for this wonderful award.